Hello, everyone. My name is Nazarena Hauser. I am currently serving as the historian on the Broward County Hispanic Bar Association, and I'm also serving as vice chair of the Hispanic Lawyers Committee. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing one of our judges, Judge Frank Ledee. Hello, Judge. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. The pleasure's all mine, Ms. Hauser. It's great to be here with you and to all the members of the Broward County Bar Association, and especially the Hispanic Bar Association. It's great to be with you all.
Thank you so much, Judge. So just to get started, when did you first join the bench, and were you either appointed or elected?
I was appointed in November of 2018, and I took the bench on December 2018. And I served in the foreclosure division, and then now I serve in the family law division.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about how the appointment process works?
It's interesting. That's a question that comes up. I get a lot of folks that ask me, well, I want to be a judge, and how do I need to go through it with the JNC process? And I think it's a culmination of experience as well as relationships and how you are perceived in the community. You have a lot of folks, when you put in your application to the JNC, you're going to go through an interview process. You're going to get vetted by the members of the JNC. And it's a two-stage process. First, you get vetted and interviewed at the JNC. And if they pass you on, then you get vetted and interviewed by the governor's general counsel and his staff or her staff. And what ends up happening is that you have it's a very diversified experience, but you have a lot of folks that you've dealt with, and I spent 25 years as a prosecutor. So I had members of the defense bar, I had members of the prosecution, I had members of the judiciary, and I had a lot of folks that basically wrote letters and supported my application to become a judge.
That's amazing. That sounds like quite a process, Judge. What is your family's national and cultural background, and what was your upbringing like as a result of that?
Okay, so my mom was born in Puerto Rico, so was my grandmother, and I was born in Puerto Rico, and our family background on the Laujer and Rivera side of the house goes back to Spain and Corsica. So that's on my mom's side. On my dad's side, we are 13 generations from St. Bart's. My dad was the last generation born in St. Bart's, and our family name comes from Église-sur-Mer in Normandy. So we have the Norman culture behind us at that point from my father's side.
Got it. Judge, did you and your family face any sort of challenges when you were growing up? And if you did, what perspectives have you gained as a result of those challenges?
I think one of the people, whenever you talk about St. Bart's, today's picture is one of the rich and famous. When I grew up in St. Bart's, it was one of the poorest islands in the Caribbean. It was an island that had very few resources, very limited fresh water, and it was an island that really didn't have any type of agricultural background. It was a trading post in many ways. And my grandfather was a merchant mariner along with his brother, and they expanded the island by literally trading. And we traded with the entire Caribbean. Even some of the trade took place here in Florida. So we had, my grandfather had ships that he used to run between the islands, and from cattle to sugar to liquor to lumber. And I mean, war munitions at that time were literally lumber and nails during the night. So there were a lot of things that we did that brought us up. So when I grew up there, it was a very, very simple lifestyle. I was born in Puerto Rico. Soon thereafter, I went over to St. Bart's. My parents brought me to St. Bart's. And for many years, my first language was French, and my second was Spanish. So it's not until I literally prepared to come to the United States that I started learning English. And it's here where I really learned English.
So, Judge, you mentioned French, Spanish, and obviously English. Do you speak any other languages?
I speak Creole and the patois of the French islands. It's interesting because in between, when I did my undergrad, I went back home and worked for a couple of years. I came back, I did my master's. I worked again in the islands, and then I came back and did my JD. And then, of course, I fell in love with prosecution, and I enjoyed practicing law. But while I was down there, most of the folks that we worked with were from Haiti. And many of the people that worked with us, and I can tell you, I've never met a harder working group of people from Haiti. And really, that's where I learned my Creole. And you had to interact because most of these islands, you got to remember, island folks spread to all of the other islands. And they bring the culture, they bring their food, they bring their music, they bring, a sense of well-being and a sense of simplicity in many ways. So it's a lot of fun to go and to interact with many different folks from the Caribbean.
Judge, was there something in your upbringing that was particularly helpful to you in getting you where you are today?
I think it's probably the fact that I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. And I saw how hard he worked, but I also saw what his achievements were. And then that was followed by my father and my mother. Um, my father and my grandfather and his partner, my father's partner, started the national airline of St. Bart's, Windward Island Airways.
Wow.
That airline is still the National Airlines of St. Martin. So when they started it with literally four Cessnas, tail draggers, and literally between a 150 to a 152, those were the training airplanes, and then the 172s, the 180s, and then it progressed through there. Up to today, when you land in St. Bart's, the largest airplane that can land there is either a Twin Otter or a Cessna Caravan or Dornier that has 19 seats, or from 9 to 19 seats. So when I was there, I grew up with my grandfather because my parents left St. Bart's and they went to St. Martin to run the liquor business that we had in St. Martin. So I would go to school in St. Bart's and go stay with my parents every day. So I was flying back and forth from school back to St. Martin. Between there, it's a 10-minute flight. But I had more flying hours, and I can tell you, I've flown in the cargo hold. I've flown between seats. It's an interesting experience when you're growing up in the islands.
That is very unique, but it sounds like a lot of fun, Judge.
It is, absolutely.
Judge, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about cultural diversity and representation on the bench. Do you believe it's important to have cultural diversity on the bench, and why?
Not only is it important, it's critical to have cultural diversity on the bench. It is something that our judiciary should reflect our community. And when you think about it, folks come to us because they're asking us to solve a problem or help them solve a problem. It is critical that everyone has an equal opportunity to do so in court. So in order that for folks that come in from the Caribbean that speak Creole, that speak Spanish, that speak French, that speak Portuguese, whatever it is, having that access to the court and knowing that you have people that wear the black robe, that are judges there, that truly understand the culture, that speak the language, that have a common understanding of what they culturally they have gone through is critical, because you can actually help them solve their own problems by following the law. But you create that environment where they trust the system and they can actually solve their own problems in that courtroom. But it requires that diversity, it requires that understanding.
Judge, do you think that we've gotten better as a community, specifically in Broward County, at having diversity on the bench that's proportional to the minority groups that we have in the county?
It's funny that you asked that question because as far as the diversity on the bench, it still leaves a lot to be desired, and we need to invest a lot more into creating that. But what's been fascinating to me is that the bar and the lawyers that are graduating law school, and especially in family, we have an incredible diversity in a family with family lawyers. And I think that they are literally the stronghold. They are the impetus for building that trust in the community. So whenever I see young lawyers coming up that come from different countries that truly are there to help and to build that trust, the efforts that the bars are doing is incredible. So, it's the support that we get from the legal community in literally expanding our diversity is critical to what the future is going to hold for the judiciary.
Absolutely. Judge, do you believe that there are special challenges or considerations that culturally diverse candidates may face when seeking either an appointment or an election to the bench?
The answer is yes. There are a lot of issues that you know, the best way to say this is that when I meet someone that is culturally diverse, that is not a Latin, is not French, does not speak Creole, my inquiry is always, I'd like to know more about them. I'd like to go ahead and have a meal with them. I'd like to share my opinions with them and listen to their opinions. And I think that it builds that sense of community and that sense of trust. Now, how to do that in today's environment is a lot more challenging. COVID-19 has changed the dynamics completely because we are isolated. We see each other through a screen. When was the last time that we actually shook hands with someone? When was the last time we gave somebody a hug? When was the last time that we actually sat down at a table and shared a meal together? It's incredibly difficult to do that. But at the very same thing, we have to find ways that to bridge gaps so that people can actually understand the cultural diversity and capitalize on it. And I can tell you, there are so many great things that folks from different places bring to this table. But we can never forget that in Florida, we have our own cultural identity. We truly do. Broward County has an incredible cultural diversity. And it's a blend of all of those folks that come in, and we have great restaurants. We have great entertainment. We really have such a diverse community that we should be capitalizing on that every single day. And I'm waiting for COVID to go away. I'm waiting for that day so we can actually get back to just being folks and people and enjoying the company of others.
We're definitely anxious, all of us, Judge. I'm with you on that. Judge, you mentioned that you were a prosecutor for 25 years. That's such a long time. What motivated you to change paths and become a judge and seek appointment? And what motivates you today to stay a judge?
I'm going to take you back for a second because in the islands, when I grew up in the islands, I was a charter boat captain. I'm a pilot. I've run businesses. And I've had that type of experience. When I came here to do my law degree, I truly fell in love with being a prosecutor. And I enjoyed it because I got to do the right thing every single day. There wasn't a day that I missed that I said, oh my God, I don't want to go to work. I always enjoyed doing the work because you truly had the ability to impact people positively. Whether you did it because it was a victim, a witness, or a defendant, you always treat them all with respect. And you always treat them with you have to have some compassion in everything you do. And I mean, some people have been terribly, they've been terrorized by being victims and things like that. So it's a way to help. But at the same time, you need to see the other side of the equation and you need to treat everybody fairly. So being a prosecutor, I spent 25 years. I think I was the longest running division chief for a gang prosecution unit in the entire East Coast of the United States, because I did it for close to 20 years. And I was the chief of the gun violence unit. I had a terrorism squad. I trained in post-blast investigations. So I had a very diverse type of background as an assistant state attorney. And it's not the traditional prosecutor that does division. I had a completely different background. But one of the strengths that I brought to the table is the ability to build partnerships between different groups, whether it was within law enforcement or within the community. Building those partnerships brought people to the table that had different insights as to a specific problem. And how you incorporate all of those views is what brought success to what we were doing. So, there's a lot more to prosecution than just arguing a case in court. By that very token, that building of partnerships is what led me to become a judge. because it took me from there and it expanded it to being a member or a commissioner for the South Broward Hospital District. And when I became a commissioner for South Broward Hospital District, my views changed, and I saw how the same partnership building was being reflected in our hospital and healthcare industry. So it was very, very important to do that. Today, I draw upon those experiences in my courtroom to make sure that anybody that comes before me knows that I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to give them the time to listen to them. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to treat them with respect. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have that environment where they can express themselves and they can tell me what the problem is. So I've drawn on so much experience as a prosecutor and as a commissioner, but in reality, I've drawn on all the experiences that I've had, all the encounters with the folks that I've encountered throughout my travels and throughout my experiences.
Judge, now that you're on the bench, is it what you expected it to be?
Actually, it is completely different than what I expected it to be. It's being a judge, in reality, you're isolated, because I went from being Frank Ledee to being judge, and everybody calling me judge. And being from the islands and having grown up here, it's a big transition. So, I don't see my colleagues very often because they're always on the bench. And we're on the bench from 8 o'clock in the morning until well into the evening sometimes. So we don't see each other very much. And at the same time, you don't have that interaction that I had as being part of a team of law enforcement or prosecutors or the hospital district. So it's isolated. But what is fascinating is that has been replaced by literally the support, the friendships, how should I say this, the interactions that I've had with the member of the legal community and all of the volunteer bars. Because they truly have, each of the bars have their own goals and their own objectives, but at the same time, we share a common goal, which is literally having folks come to us and helping them solve their problems. So it's just a different way of looking at it.
Judge, what's it like being a Hispanic judge? What was it like for you being a judge, being Hispanic when you were first on the bench?
I know where the good restaurants are, the good Spanish restaurants are, and especially the good Puerto Rican restaurants are. So yeah, we can share that with everyone. I think it's when you first come on board, they don't really know you, and it takes time to get to learn about someone and to interact with that person and to build a level of trust in that person. The one thing that I always try to do is I always try to be consistent in all of my rulings, because I want lawyers, when they come before me, to address two questions with their clients, because their clients are always going to have two questions. One, who's my judge? And two, what is my judge going to do? And if the lawyers know that the judge is consistent in how they rule and how they follow the law and how they treat people in their courtroom, it makes them a much better source of, how should I say this? They can actually give their clients a level of confidence that they're going to be treated fairly in court. And that's incredibly important. So it's being a Hispanic judge, you have one more level that you have to go through, because they really don't know what to make of you. And I've had the pleasure of, my Spanish roots, my Hispanic roots have been incredibly valuable to me with folks in the courtroom.
Judge, have you either experienced firsthand or witnessed discrimination against minorities throughout your lifetime? And if so, what, if anything, did you learn from that?
I think it's a given that we all have experienced some type of level of discrimination, if not witnessed it, experienced it. Coming from the Caribbean, I grew up in a place where the color of your skin was not important. It's I fished with whoever was there to go fishing with me, went fishing with me. It didn't make a difference as to the color of their skin. And in many ways, it was not their political views didn't matter. We were friends and we shared experiences and had a good time together and we worked together. I think the one thing that was very different when I came here was there were silos and you had to breach all of those silos. And my strong point were my languages, my language skills. So I was able to penetrate multiple silos purely because I could speak the language. And I understood, or at least I took the time to learn what mattered to each of the silos. Have I seen discrimination? Absolutely, absolutely. When you look at as a prosecutor and you see what happens in communities and the LGBTQ community that are victims that are literally sit in silence and are afraid to go in to get help because they are going to be, they feel that they're going to be literally punished by family members or friends or different groups within their community. That I've seen. I've seen it on other ways where kids truly are not treated the same, or even in situations where you're in a courtroom and people literally don't take the time to get to know folks. And yes, there is definitely that complex. But I can tell you how I solve that problem. It may be unique to me, but when I walk onto the bench, any bias that I have stays outside of the courtroom. And the reason that I do that is because I'm not there. It's not about me. It's about the folks that have come before me that expect me to help them solve their problems. So my biases don't matter. And I was always, whenever I picked a jury, the first thing I told to all the jurors, all the potential jurors, is that bias does not belong in the courtroom. If you have a bias, tell me about it right now, because it doesn't belong in the courtroom. And that has allowed me to be much more open and to listen much more carefully and to pay attention to truly the needs of the folks that come before me.
Judge, along those same lines, I think you would agree that most, if not all, our judges are well-rounded, dedicated, hard workers. You touched on it a little bit, but what other qualities do you think are important for our judges to have on the bench?
I think it's a willingness to learn. It's a willingness to be open-minded. And it's also a willingness to realize that as judges, we follow the law. We don't make the law. And we have to be very consistent in that type of an approach. My colleagues, I have the privilege of serving with some of the finest men and women that serve on the bench. And I appeared for 25 years in front of some of the finest people I've ever met. And when you sit back and you say, what makes a great judge? And a great judge is one that's passionate about what he or she does. It's something that they bring to the table that builds that confidence in the bench. So you have to be passionate about this. You're dealing with people's future. You're trying to help them solve their problems. You have to be passionate. You have to be creative in the solutions that you come up with. And you have to be able to adapt to situations like COVID-19. So those are three of the areas that I definitely pull as a strong point.
Judge, how important do you think it is for individuals who aspire to become judges or successful professionals in general to have access to good education, internships, clerkships, and mentors? What kind of difference do you think that could make for a person?
Is building those partnerships, building those relationships at a very early stage in your career will pay off astronomically later on. And I tell this to all the law students. Anybody that's out there that's a law student, you are more than welcome to come into my courtroom. You're more than welcome to zoom in to my hearings. You're more than welcome to come in and speak with me about it, because it's really important to build those relationships. I've had the pleasure of having interns from a number of different universities that come and that work with me. And I find them fascinating because they have so many new ideas that can be incorporated into what we do, and they're the future of our legal community. So I invite them and I encourage them to join the bars, the voluntary bars. I encourage them to participate, and I encourage them to meet as many folks as possible so that they can develop those partnerships.
Judge, do you believe, do you have any role models?
You know what? My grandfather. My
I thought
grand.
you'd say that. That's what I thought you might say.
Yeah, I never met a man that was so dedicated to just being, taking care of his family and taking care of just being truly just somebody that was an ambassador for his country and for his island. And I think that my father evolved the same way and had the same thing. But my grandfather, he taught me how to fish. And he was a pretty good fisherman, but I beat him in fishing afterwards.
I love that. I love that. Judge, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it so much. I know the rest of the community appreciates, and thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us today.
It is a pleasure. And seriously, Ms. Mauser, you know, the family law bars and the Hispanic bars and all of the associations that are out there, I, I, I value your support, and I truly appreciate what you do for our community every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge. We appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.